Greetings, counselors. Thank you for logging in for this demonstration of the new BigFuture college search tool. As you are probably aware, it has changed quite a bit. So we just felt like a demonstration for you would be beneficial as you work with your students on their college search journey. You might recall that the old college search tool had a number of filters on the left-hand side that you could select from. Counselors really loved this feature, having everything there. However, what we learned in our conversations with students is that they didn't like it so much. They found it overwhelming. It was too much information. They weren't really sure where to start. So that is really the big why behind the change to college search. So what we learned from students is that there were four filters that they went to predominantly. And so you see those here on this screen. They frequented location, major, type, and campus life. So that is why for the beginning of the exploration process, we are starting with those four. However, once they get further into the tool, they will be able to access additional filters to continue to expand their search. So I'm going to begin by first thing that your students need to do is have a College Board account. So that way they are able to save their work in Big Future and not have to recreate their lists each time that they go in. So once they've created their account, they will sign in. So that feature is up here, the upper right hand corner. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in as if I were a student. And now you can see that I am in my Big Future, my College Board account. So next step is to begin exploring. So let's start by exploring the location filter first, because this is one of the things that's really important to students. It gives your students three options. They can filter down based on states or territories that they're interested in. They can select a particular distance from their zip code or from a zip code. And then they can also do a search based on colleges outside of the US. So let's begin with the first one with states. So it allows me to either scroll, or if I know what states I'm interested in, I can type. So I'm in Georgia, so let's start with Georgia. I might be interested in a neighboring state. So let's say um, South Carolina, and then I might have family in Ohio, for example, and so I might want some colleges in that state as well. And then I hit continue and then select show colleges. So as your students start to indicate their preferences in college search, it will create a list of results, and it will also let your students know how many colleges are fit that criteria that your students indicated. Um, I want to go back and just go through each of these for you. I can also select the distance from a particular zip code. So let's say I want to stick nearby and my zip code is 30045. I can then select how far away from that zip code I want to limit my search to. So if I want to stay in walking distance, about 2 miles, I can select that. I can select 20, 50, 200 miles, 500, or 2,000 miles. And for students, I really love the feature where it sort of gives an idea of what does it mean 2 miles. Okay, that's about walking distance, because I also, as an adult, am not very good at, okay, how many miles and what does that mean in terms of getting there. So it also lets your students know, okay, this would be a short drive, this would be a moderate drive, long drive, a short flight or a long flight. So for the sake of this demonstration, let's just select 50 miles from the zip code that I entered, and then I would select show colleges. And so you can see here the results came up with 35 colleges based on that one filter that I selected. And you would just scroll down. You can see that has all 35 listed there. So let's go back because we have one more. I can also do a search based on colleges outside of the United States. So let's say I am interested in Canada. So I can begin typing Canada and select that and hit continue. And if I'm interested in more than one country, I can enter multiple, but I'm just going to enter Canada for the sake of our purposes here, and then select show colleges. So you can see College Search came up with 36 colleges that fit that criteria. And again, I would just scroll and it shows me all the colleges that fit that criteria. So that is your location filter. Your students can also start with um, the major filter. Let's say I am interested in nursing. I can begin typing that. And so not only does it come up with um, all things nursing, but I can also be very specific in terms of what type of nursing. I might be interested in geriatric nursing. So I can select that and hit continue. And College Search will show me the 32 colleges that offer that as majors. And one thing I didn't show you at the very beginning is that there are over 3,600 colleges in the College Search tool. So it, there's plenty out there for your students to select from, and the filters, as you can see, are really great at narrowing it down from 3,600. The other one that students used a lot was type. So this is where your students can select if they're interested in a 4-year or 2-year college. They can select public or private. And we have a note here for your students about them not limiting themselves because, with financial aid, both public and private schools can be affordable. But of course, they don't know that until they've gone through the process and received their financial aid offers. So I'm going to select both public and private. I can also make selections based on specific populations. So I might be interested in a historically black college and university, or a Hispanic serving, or a tribal college, or I might want something single gender like all female, all women, or all men's college. And then also, if I want a college that is based on religious affiliation, I can make selections there as well. So let's just select some colleges there. And so you could see, based on the filters that I did just now, way too many, and I need to filter down some more because I have almost 2,000 colleges on my list. All right, the next one that students used a lot was campus life. So on this one, here students can select the size of the college that they are interested in, whether it's really small, like less than 3,000, or really, really large, more than 15,000. But for the sake of our demonstration, I'm going to select something in the middle. So I'm going to select both of these ranges here. Students can select the setting that they're interested in, whether they want to be in an urban setting, suburban, or rural. I'm just going to select suburban for our purposes here. If you have students that are interested in sports, and it says here at any level, so for the sake of research, they don't have to indicate, if they just want intramural or if they want division 1, 2, or 3. They just select the sport that they are interested in. And same thing with activities. You might have students who have been involved in particular activities all throughout high school, or they might be interested in doing something completely brand new. So let's say, for example, I'm interested in film. I can select that, and I can again select multiple activities if I so desire. The other thing that's under campus life is special services that they might need. So, for campus services, you might have students who want to know about colleges that offer alcohol or substance abuse counseling or have on campus daycare or services for low income or minority students. So, students can make selections based on that. We have 2 other ones here, but they really don't pertain as much to high school students in terms of if a college has a veterans counselor or if they have programs for reentering students or adults. For students that are looking for disability support services, they can make selections to see which colleges are um, are offering these services for whether they're blind or visually impaired, deaf or hard of hearing, learning disorders, speech or communication disorders, or if they need wheelchair accessibility. And so, based on those selections, I have 107 colleges based on that criteria. So again, that's still a really large number. So I would go back in and make some more selections. All right, so we've looked at location, major, type, and campus life. Those are the four that were on the initial home page. But as I indicated at the beginning, there are three additional filters that your students can explore once they get into the tool. So let's look at affordability. Under this filter, your students can indicate preferences for financial need met. So if this is something that's important to your student, they might want only colleges that meet 100% of their financial need. They might want to know what colleges offer application fee waivers or which colleges are free to apply to. And then also under this filter, students can toggle if they are interested in aid for international students. And so based on my choices, that gave me 72 colleges. So in a real situation, I would add more filters again to bring it down to a more reasonable research size. Let's look at the credit filter. So this would be useful for your students who might have taken AP courses and they want to know which colleges offer placement or credit for AP exams. So they could just toggle that on if they're interested in that. Or they might have taken CLEP exams and want to know which colleges offer that for credit for those. Or you might also have students who are they're starting at a 2-year college and want to make sure the colleges on their list would accept those credits or that accept credits in general. All right. So again, I just picked a few, and you can see how this number changes based on the preferences I indicate. And then the last filter is admissions. So this is where your students would go if they want to see how selective a college is. So if they're looking for something that's very selective, a college only accepts up to 10% of those who apply, then they would select that. But they can also make selections from very selective, selective, less selective, or not selective at all. They might be interested in colleges that have an open admissions policy, or you might even have some students that you want to give guidance to if they are, for whatever reason, not going to complete their high school diploma and are going to go instead and pursue their GED. They can toggle this on so they can see which colleges would accept that in lieu of a high school diploma. So naturally, we would expect students to use multiple filters to narrow down their college search. They don't have to just limit themselves to one. So I'm going to make a few selections just so you can see what the next steps are for students. So I'm going to again start with distance. That's really important to students. I'm going to be a little more expansive. I'm going to go for the long drive of 200 miles. Right now, I have 225 colleges, so clearly I need to do some more filtering down. Let's go to type. I might only be interested in four-year colleges. I'm going to still select both public and private. I might be interested in HBCUs. Okay, so based on that criteria, it's whittled it down to 18 colleges. And I think, it depends on the student, but that's a really good number to start the research process. Um, Also warn your students they can overfilter. So for example, if I added one more, let's do 100% need met. Let's see what happens to my options. All right, so I definitely over filtered here because I had no options left. But even if, let's say, I selected size, now I'd have three. That's still over filtering because now I only have three colleges on my list. For students who are beginning their research process, somewhere in the, you know, 20, 30 colleges is a pretty decent number to begin the college research process with the goal of whittling it down to their final list so that they can know where they want to apply. All right, so I'm back to my 18 colleges here. And so let's say, for example, I want to learn more about Spelman. And for each college that popped up in my results, I get some initial information, some general information about the school, four-year private medium, it's urban. I get the graduation rate, average aid per year, and important to talk to your students about average. That means that there are some financial aid offers that are more than 43,000 and there are some that are less. And then it also provides me a range for their SAT scores that they've accepted. I also have the option of sorting um, by different data points. The default is sorting by graduation rate, but I can also sort by alphabetical order. I can also sort by SAT range if I so desire. So let's just go back to the highest graduation rate. So I want to learn more about Spelman so that I can decide if this is a college I'm interested in and want to add to my list, or if I'm not interested in it and move on to the next college. So when I click on Spelman, now I have more tabs that I can use to explore and learn more about the institution. So I get those key data points that we saw in the previous screen and just some general information, what application types they accept, information about fee waivers. I get some information about their deadline dates and some contact information like their website. Then I can go to admissions. And here I learned more about the fact, okay, Spelman is selective and what their acceptance rate is. I get a breakdown of the GPA range that they generally accept. Um, so this is really great information for your students as they're trying to figure out schools that are either a safety match or reach college for them, because your students will know what numbers they are bringing to the table. So if, for example, I have a 2.5, if I'm in this range here, I know that Spelman is going to be, I would put that in my reach category because most of the students that they accept are really hitting at a 3.5 or higher. Same thing with the SAT range or ACT range, even. I see here that Spelman, their range is between 1080 and 1230. So I might have, for example, an 1100. that puts me smack dab in the middle of their SAT range. So for based on that, I might consider it a match school. It's not a safety school, it's not a reach. I might have a good chance of getting in, especially if when you're looking at both of these numbers, if I'm within the range here and if my GPA is hitting in the majority of what they have accepted, then that might be a reach. I mean, a match for me. But it might be a reach again if my SAT score is at a 900. That's falling below the range that they've accepted. So I don't know what my chances are of getting in. Doesn't mean that I won't get in, but it does let me know that, it might be a challenge for me. So I would consider that a reach. And then conversely, if my SAT is well above that, maybe I'm at a 1400 and my GPA is over 3.75. I wouldn't necessarily consider that a safety school, but definitely would put me in a more comfortable um, situation in terms of how likely I would be to get in. And then you have information here about their selective acceptance rate, let you know how many students applied, how many were admitted, and how many of those admitted actually enrolled. And also important for you to know that this information is provided by the colleges themselves. Application requirements are listed here. We have more information about additional deadlines and information about the application fee and what their fee waiver policy is. After looking at admissions, I can go on to academics. It lets me know their graduation rate, how many majors they offer, what their student to faculty ratio is. Another really important data point for students is the retention rate. How many of the students are coming back? Because the goal is not just to get into college, but also to complete college. So these two statistics are really important in terms of the how many are graduating and how many are coming back year to year. I can also look up information about what majors they offer and any special academic programs that are available at that college. Next, I can look up information about costs. So again, this tells me the cost after scholarships and grants. I get information about what percentage of students receive aid and what their average aid package is. So that is the net price. But I can also go to the college's net price calculator on their website. It gives me a link for that. Let me just show you real quick how it connects you. So it takes me straight to Spellman's net price calculator. I also really like this feature because of the average net price by household income, because this supports what you tell your students in terms of the sticker price, which we see here is 25,000 a year, is not necessarily what you will end up paying, and it breaks it down um, for the students based on their household income. So you can see for those over 110 annual income, the average net price is a little over 48,000. But for those under 30,000 annual income, net price is 40,000. And then it also gives you information about other costs like housing, books, transportation, and personal expenses. If interested, I can also look into the distribution details of financial aid, what percentage of students receive aid, percentage of need met. I can also see, how much on average the packages are or need-based loans, etc. Debt at graduation, that's a really big thing that students are paying attention to these days. financial aid deadlines, and then information about next steps. Each of these would take you to a separate page, a separate link. And then, of course, students will want additional information about campus life. So here I can see information about housing, what's available. Um, First years in college housing gives me that percentage. And it could be that if we don't have information on it, that the college did not provide it, but there's information here for that. What sports they provide, offer activities, breakdown about their student body, so total number of undergrad students, percent number of full-time students, and the breakdown for racial and ethnicity, percentage of out-of-state students. And again, you have additional links here based on what the student is looking for. So, I've looked at all of this and I said, well, Spelman really is of interest to me. And then I can go back. I can either add it to my list here by clicking right here. You see right here, it says add it to list. And also my number of colleges increased from 7 to 8. So that would be my research on Spelman. And then I can go back to my results list and look at more colleges, for example. The other great thing about students adding colleges to their list is that if they are also signed up for student search service, colleges, for example, I'm going to show you my list right now. So, for example, I have Clayton State on my list of my 8 colleges. Clayton State would be able to see if I have opted into student search service. Clayton State would be able to see that I have indicated interest in their college. So it's another way for students to demonstrate their interest and raise their hand and let the admissions office know that I am interested in your college. And then the college can then initiate contact with the student, um, and then they go from there. And so our goal is we would really love to see students add at least 6 colleges to their list. And then if they decide later on, you know what, I'm not interested in Clayton State anymore, I can click this X. It'll ask me, are you sure you want to remove Clayton State? And I say, yes, let's remove that one. And so you can see that it now disappears from my list and I'm back to 7. I can also do a search by name. So if I know for sure I'm interested in a particular college, I can look it up that way. So let's say Dartmouth College. It'll pull it up. I do my research and then decide I'm interested in it. I can add that to my list. So students can build their list by either using the filters that we went through, or they can also search by college name. Another great benefit to students um, having at least 6 colleges on their list is that they will automatically be entered for the Big Future scholarships. They will be entered for the $500 drawing, but they'll also be entered for a $40,000 drawing when they have at least 6 on their list. We have a great webinar on that you can watch and learn more about the Big Future scholarships, but just wanted to make sure you knew about that feature. So you can see that I'm just going to go back to my initial um, my initial results list. It's very user friendly for the students. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. My suggestion to you is that you just get in and explore the college search tool, but um, hope that you really like the changes. More changes will be coming, especially as we continue to receive feedback from students as well as counselors, and that hopefully, you know, as you enter your season of advising, your juniors about college research, that you'll encourage them to use the Big Future tool that we have here, and hope that the demonstration was helpful to you. Have a great day.